No DQ Galaxy. We are live with No DQ&A video, No DQ's official Q&A series here on nodq.com and the YouTube channel. Thank you all so much for your viewership and support. I very much appreciate it. I have some email questions. You can also super chat a question, which is very much appreciated, and your question will take priority if it's a super chat. Let's get to the questions. Things are heating up with WWE SummerSlam coming up soon, but further out in the future, we have WrestleMania 41. Now, Ian had sent me this email question, so I will read it off. Ian said, WrestleMania 41 has a lot of options to go with for matches. With John Cena's retirement coming up, should he face Cody Rhodes with or without the world title and turn heel in his final run and pass the torch to the true successor of the Superman character in Cody Rhodes? Ian brought up how Orton and Cena is wanted, but we've seen them wrestle hundreds of times in many different stipulations. While they never went at it in Mania, it would just feel like a waste of Cena's retirement tour, and he should go up against somebody new and big in terms of stardom. That's a great question. Randy Orton seems to be the favorite as far as John Cena's potential opponents go for WrestleMania, and Cody Rhodes versus The Rock seems like a logical match for WrestleMania 41, but we've all talked about this. What about Roman Reigns versus The Rock? When is that going to happen? If WWE decides to go with that for WrestleMania 41, that obviously leaves Cody Rhodes needing an opponent. I do like the idea of Cody Rhodes versus John Cena in a match where Cena could potentially win that record-breaking 17th World Championship. I'm not against the idea, but I also think that we have to see Cody Rhodes versus The Rock at some point. Is that going to be WrestleMania? Is WWE going to have one night Cody versus The Rock and the other night be The Rock versus Roman Reigns? That remains to be seen. But if WWE wants to only do one match with The Rock for WrestleMania, and it's The Rock versus Roman Reigns, then yes, I think John Cena versus Cody Rhodes would be an excellent choice. And I really do feel, if not WrestleMania, I think that's a match we need to see. I don't know if it would be Royal Rumble, although I would suspect John Cena will enter the Royal Rumble. Next year's SummerSlam, apparently John Cena will be wrestling past WrestleMania 41, which could open the door for a match at SummerSlam. I would be fine with that. I just would like to see Cody Rhodes versus John Cena on this retirement tour one way or another. So thank you very much for that question. Now, Calvin Bowman sent me an email question. Thank you, Calvin. I appreciate it. It says, do you think that Dominic Mysterio will betray Rhea Ripley and him and Liv Morgan will kiss again in front of Rhea on the stage? And Sean Garner brought this up in the chat room about Dominic potentially turning on Rhea Ripley. That seems to be the obvious direction for SummerSlam. I do not think Rhea Ripley is going to win back the title. Liv Morgan will probably retain, and I suspect we will see shenanigans. Dominic and Liv end up together. Now, there's a whole other way to look at this. You got Finn Balor. Where does Finn Balor fit into all this? Is he in cahoots with Dominic and Liv Morgan, the three of them, and they're going to throw out Damian Priest? That's why Damian Priest has been moving in a babyface direction. I think that's a possibility. Dominic turning face, I don't think that would work. Dominic is on the run of a lifetime right now as a heel. He is doing great stuff. One day, maybe Dominic could be a babyface, but I don't think now is the time to turn him face. When he's getting all the heat he's getting, I think you need to keep that going. And having Balor be with Liv Morgan and turn against Dominic, I don't think that would be the best decision for Dominic Mysterio. Therefore, my gut feeling is Dominic will turn against Rhea Ripley and will officially hook up with Liv Morgan. They'll do the big kiss and celebrate, and that'll continue the feud for the next several months. So thank you for that question, Calvin. Mr. Tito sent in a $2 super chat, which is very much appreciated. And keep in mind, you guys can super chat questions. They will take priority. And we do have a few that have just come in. So thank you guys for your super chats. Okay, I'll answer this question. I hyped up on social media that I was not going to talk politics. The whole point of this video was for distraction, so we don't have to think about what's going on in the real world right now. That was my intention with this live stream going up against the Republican National Convention. But Mr. Tito wanted to know my thoughts on Hulk Hogan speaking at the event. I'm not at all surprised. Hulk Hogan did post on Instagram about Donald Trump and the attempted assassination. Hogan showed his support. Hulk Hogan is a politician in the ring, out of the ring. He knows how to push the buttons, and he'll tell you a story, whether it's true or not. It's Hulk Hogan. He'll go out there and he'll put over Donald Trump, and he'll talk about America needing to be saved, blah, blah, blah. And it will be exactly what you would expect from Hulk Hogan. So I really don't have that much of an opinion on it, other than I'm not at all surprised by it. And I expect him to say exactly what you think Hulk Hogan would say in that kind of scenario. Psycho Jet Black sent in a $5 super chat. Thank you for that. Much appreciated. Psycho Jet Black said, it's crazy how Chad Gable's career was able to survive Shorty G. What other wrestlers were you surprised were able to get past awful gimmicks? That is a great question, because there haven't been too many of them. Chad Gable might actually be the best example of a wrestler that was given a gimmick of death and managed to come back by it. I suppose Karrion Kross, they gave him the helmet, he got fired, and then he came back. Granted, he didn't do a whole lot when he came back, but he was brought back and has been a fixture on WWE television. He got rehired. To a degree, I would say somebody like Matt Cardona, who was booked as Zack Ryder, basically a joke. And to his credit, he went on the indie scene and rebuilt himself. I mean, there actually are some good examples. I mean, 3MB is a great example. You look at Drew McIntyre in particular, and Psycho Jet Black brought up Drew McIntyre. He was part of a gimmick that was basically the end for most wrestlers, but he left. He busted his ass on the indie scene. Cody Rhodes too. Cody Rhodes with Stardust. He came back, became the top babyface in WWE. Here's a good one, although this isn't exactly the same because they were two totally different characters. Isaac Yankem was dropped, and then Glenn Jacobs took on a new gimmick. So not exactly the same. Bo Dallas is a good example. B-team, and now he's the leader of the Wyatt Six. Again, gimmick change. The Sultan, he was wearing a mask. Rikishi was something totally different. LA Knight's a good one. Max Dupree. It wasn't the worst gimmick in the world. I actually did not hate it. I thought that LA Knight, Max Dupree, I thought regardless of the name and the gimmick, he made the most of it. Deacon Batista's a good example, but Batista was so early in his career that it didn't really hurt him. Papa Shango, I liked the gimmick. They just didn't really book it the right way, in my opinion, and they went too over the top with the theatrics and, you know, the putting the voodoo curse on the Ultimate Warrior. Ooh, Michael Cole's a good one. It's funny how much people hated Michael Cole, not even in a good way, but they just did not like him. And now Michael Cole is considered to be one of the most respected announcers in the wrestling business. That was a great question, Psycho Jet Black. Thank you for that one. Building Nexus sent in a $5 super chat. Thank you for that. I very much appreciate it. Again, you guys can super chat questions. Those will become the priority questions. Building Nexus said, when Dominic betrays Rhea Ripley at SummerSlam, wouldn't it be poetic justice for when Rhea first turned Dominic against his dad? Absolutely. And even though Dominic's a heel, he can point that out. And Judgment Day can point that out, that Rhea Ripley was a manipulator and she was the one that ended up getting manipulated. So I definitely think that can play into the storyline. And yeah, it works. There's no honor amongst thieves. You double cross somebody, one day you might end up being the one double crossed and you learn a lesson. And when you become a babyface character, it's learning that lesson the hard way. And then you gain sympathy from the crowd. So I would say play up on that for sure. Shout out to James. Much love to James, who sent in $2. No question, just support. Well, thank you, James. And feel free to throw me a question. I could definitely answer any questions that you might have. Throw me something crazy. Just a random ass question about wrestling. Stump me. Try to put me on the spot. And I don't mean a dog spot or a liver spot, just a question. Thank you for that. Now, I do want to go back to Ian, who sent in another interesting question, and maybe you guys can throw in some responses on this one, because this, I was trying to think about it, and it's hard to say what I would consider to be underrated as far as factions and stables. Ian wanted to know, what are some of the most underrated factions and stables from any wrestling promotion? I would say the Main Event Mafia, even though they were at the top of TNA, I felt like they didn't get enough recognition for actually being a good faction in TNA and having some credibility. And of course, I always remember Scott Steiner and that promo where he called Samoa Joe fat. I think you could have gotten more mileage out of them, but of course, I wanted to see some younger guys elevated out of that, and it never panned out that way. As far as WWE goes and underrated factions, I mean, there were so many of them. It's hard to pick just one that I would say, yeah, that faction really could have been more. Not the Job Squad. I mean, they were always going to be lower card guys. Fabulous Freebirds were big stars in their time. I mean, maybe they should have had a proper run in WWE. You know, it's funny. James mentioned the Union, and I was thinking of them. They were a faction for like a week. You're going to put those guys together, at least keep them around for maybe 6 months or something. I've seen comments about the Right to Censor. I wasn't the biggest fan of the Right to Censor, and actually, I think it went about as long as it needed to. WCW, West Texas Rednecks, would be one of my top choices. WCW just got that stable just completely decimated and killed them off before they really had a chance to reach their full potential. Like, I think that faction could have had a good 6 months or so. Dangerous Alliance in WCW, they had a decent run. I think that they definitely could have been even bigger than they were. Here's another one, the Revolution from WCW with Chris Benoit, Dean Malenko, Perry Saturn, Shane Douglas, like those guys ended up going to WWE as the Radicals, except for Shane. But if you would actually push those guys as top stars, maybe WCW would still be in business. So I actually think the Revolution might be towards the top of my list. Un-Americans. Un-Americans was a good one, but very stereotypical in my opinion. Just, your standard "we hate America" faction, crowd chants USA, kind of generic in my opinion. Let's go to a couple other questions here. Thank you for that one. Psycho Jet Black sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you for that, Psycho. Says, how would you book Charlotte Flair's return and new gimmick? New gimmick, I would like to see her come back with a little bit of a makeover. I don't know if it's changing her hair or changing her attire, changing her mannerisms, but it's always good for her to tweak it up a little bit and come back, reinvent herself. They did change her music before she got hurt, which was good. You can always change a few things here and there. And of course, I could see her potentially breaking the record that John Cena and Ric Flair have. Everyone's thinking about John Cena breaking it, but wouldn't shock me if Charlotte ends up being the one. And plus, WWE can say a woman did it. They get that cred. I would keep pushing her towards the title. I know people don't want to hear that. Some people think she's overpushed and she shouldn't be near the world title. But at this point, she's so close, 14, 15. I don't have a problem with it. Bring her back strong. Get her in there with Bayley on SmackDown. Maybe get her on Raw eventually with Rhea Ripley again. You can always run that back. I would probably go with Bayley for now and then maybe consider moving her in the draft. Let her be a heel again. I think she's best as a heel. Bayley could use a strong opponent. I mean, you could even build up Charlotte for Jade Cargill at some point. Maybe Charlotte wins another world title, and then you build up Jade. Maybe Jade wins the Royal Rumble and faces Charlotte at WrestleMania. And then Charlotte drops the title and maybe goes over to Raw. There's an idea. Building Nexus sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you for that. Says, couldn't Damian Priest learn the lesson too? Absolutely. And that's part of this whole Damian Priest face turn. You betray people, but then eventually you can end up being the one portrayed, and there's a lesson to be learned from it. So yeah, I think that definitely applies to Damian Priest as well. And so far, I've been liking this direction with Priest, turning him face, and I expect Rhea to continue going in that direction. I mean, Rhea was obvious months ago, and Priest, he can work both roles well, but I do think it's time. They may keep Judgment Day going, but I think it would be good to maybe reinvent Judgment Day and have some new people in the group. Like Carlito's been a nice change of pace for them. Maybe they could add one or two more. Mr. Tito sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you for that, Tito. Much appreciated. Mr. Tito says, was it a mistake by AEW to give away MJF versus Will Ospreay for free? It depends on the follow-up. Are they going to do the rematch at All In? Will it boost the pay-per-view numbers for All In? If the answer is yes, then I think it was a good move. If All In does the same number than every other AEW show, then probably not. It did not help with the ratings that much. I mean, it did. I think they did close to 800,000 this week, which is like 100,000 more than what they did last week. And I think it was actually their best number in 3 months. I think Tony Khan put that out on Twitter/X. I wasn't expecting it to do any major number. Like if they had done 1 million viewers and now people are back in the habit of watching AEW, I would say it was a great move. But my feeling is 100,000 extra viewers. And if they go back to 700,000, next week they got Blood and Guts. So they may do 800,000 again. But 2 weeks from now, they're back to 700,000 and the pay-per-view number doesn't go up for an Ospreay MJF rematch, then it was not a good idea. Time will tell on that one. I think the jury is still out on that. PsychoJet Black sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Question: could Finn Balor salvage the demon gimmick under Triple H? Absolutely 100%, but I don't think now's the time. Finn Balor is doing some of the best work of his career in Judgment Day. He even said it himself. The Balor character is different from what Finn Balor was before, and the demon character doesn't fit in with what he's doing in Judgment Day at the moment. I agree with that completely. It's a babyface gimmick. So if Balor eventually goes face, yeah, bring it back. But I don't see the need to turn him face anytime soon. If anything, he'll be the leader of Judgment Day once Damian Priest is gone. And I presume Priest will be gone sometime in the near future. Eventually, one day, Demon Balor will return. It'll be awesome. It'll be a great moment, but it's got to be at the right time. Save it for the best opportunity. All right, James sent in a $5 super chat. Here's a comment. Ooh, this is going to be a hard one for me to answer. Says, I'm a Sam Roberts mark, so please explain to me why everyone hates the man. He's a fan like all of us. Damn it. I get the vibe, and this is just my opinion, I get the vibe that he's a butt kisser. I don't know the guy, and maybe I'm completely wrong on it, but he seems like the kind of guy that will say what the wrestlers want to hear. He does a good job, but I just get that impression of him that he is saying things to make WWE happy and, hey, gets you a job, gets you the opportunity to be on the shows. A lot of people would do that, but I think that there are also people that don't find him authentic. And I kind of get where they're coming from. But again, could be totally wrong on that. Maybe he's just a really nice guy. I never met him, so can't really say too much about him other than that's just the impression I get from his interviews and him on television. You know, he's always going to defend WWE. Although if he didn't have a job with WWE, one day you might see him not praise WWE so much. And we've seen that with people. They leave WWE and then all of a sudden they're not so positive about the company. Go figure. But thank you for that. You know, that he's a polarizing guy, Sam Roberts. I know people do like him, but there's also his critics. And I can see both sides of why people like him and also why people don't like him. All right, Dwayne Atkinson sent in a $5 super chat. Thank you for that, Dwayne. I appreciate it. Dwayne's question here says, I know you've already spoken on Dominic and the Rhea and Liv Morgan triangle, but could you see Dominic betraying Rhea and Liv, beat her, and then Liv turns and betrays Dominic afterwards? I don't think Dominic's going babyface anytime soon. I feel like he is a natural heel. And MJF did go babyface for a while, but Dominic, I say don't mess with it. It's a winning formula right now with him as a heel. One day he might be a babyface. It might work. But remember The Miz when they tried to turn him face? It just didn't work. Miz is a face right now, but I think Dominic needs that time to let this heel run play itself out. So I don't think that's going to happen, but with Finn Balor potentially pulling the strings, I mean, I feel like Balor's involved somehow. Either Balor, Dominic, and Liv are all together, or Balor has been setting up Dominic all this time. But I feel like with Priest possibly being out of the group, Dominic will more than likely stay within the Judgment Day and with Liv Morgan. To me, that's the safe way to go. And I don't think you need to go too crazy with this. Just don't overcomplicate it. Dominic and Liv get together. Rhea Ripley's coming back for revenge. This is going to be a lengthy feud. It's not going to be one match. To me, Rhea's got to have something to be angry about, and that's getting screwed over by Dominic and Liv Morgan. That's how I see this playing out. Now, Mr. Tito sent in a $2 super chat. Mr. Tito's got some juicy ones tonight. Mr. Tito says, favorite Chris Benoit match? Well, since WWE will never talk about it, Kurt Angle, Royal Rumble 2003, I would say is the all-time greatest Chris Benoit match. WrestleMania 20 with Shawn Michaels and Triple H winning the title, that would be up there as well. And the rematch from Backlash a month later, that was another great one. The match with Bret Hart in WCW, I would say that was my favorite match with him in WCW. With the Owen Hart tribute would be up there. And also when Randy Orton beat him, or Randy Orton found the title in the ring at SummerSlam, that was a good one. But I would say Kurt Angle. Royal Rumble 2003 is my number one. Psycho Jet Black sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you for that, Psycho. I appreciate it. Psycho said, the real butt kisser is Peter Rosenberg. Never liked him. He kind of falls into the same category as Sam Roberts. I get the same vibe with Peter Rosenberg. Whether it's accurate or not, who knows? Again, he might be a nice guy, but I never met him. I feel like he's the kind of guy that knows how to play the game, as Triple H would say, knows the right thing to say to the right people, and that gets you places in life. So more power to him. Sometimes you got to play the corporate game. You got to know how to handle yourself in the business if you want to get somewhere. All right, Psycho Jet Black with a loaded one right now. Thank you for that. Psycho Jet Black says, best and worst WCW TV matches and promos. So I'm guessing this is not pay-per-views. You're just talking about TV matches. Going back on Chris Benoit, the matches with Booker T, the best of 7 series. I do have 2 favorite WCW TV matches that you may or may not remember. Sting beating Diamond Dallas Page on Nitro. I think it was April 26th, 1999, somewhere around there. DDP won the title back the same night, which was stupid. But that was an awesome match, and the crowd just went crazy for that. And then this is a random-ass one because it's from the Vince Russo era, but Booker T versus Lance Storm. It was like July, August 2000 when Booker T was champion in his first run. It was right before New Blood Rising, I think. Awesome match. Like, that was a hell of a match. And if WCW had more matches like that for the world title, again, they might still be in business. And best promos, I mean, Ric Flair, as far as TV promos, that promo he cut when he came back in 1998 in Greenville, South Carolina, that is an all-time classic. And you know it was great because guys like MJF were influenced by that. Fire me, I'm already fired. And then the one where he's in the ring with Mean Gene the night after Starrcade 98 when he's stripping his clothes down. I mean, Flair probably had like a dozen epic promos in WCW that were top tier. And Hollywood Hogan did too. Like there was one where they kicked out the Giant from the NWO the first time in early 97. And then there was one with Hogan and Piper in 97 that was really good. There were quite a few. And then the one where Bischoff turned heel with Piper, that was a good one too. Those are the ones that stand out the most to me. Now, you said best and worst. So I guess I'll transition here and kind of tie these two together. Mr. Tito sent in a $2 super chat. He says, how great was Sid? Well, if you want to talk about the best, worst promos in WCW history, Sid coming out there saying, I have half the brain that you do. And best, worst promos, Scott Steiner coming out there ripping into Ric Flair, even though they were not in a storyline, telling people or telling Flair that while you were out there, all the people did, they grabbed the remote, changed the channel, and watched Stone Cold. But yeah, Sid had a lot of funny moments in WCW when his car got smashed by Goldberg and the Space 22. Loved Sid. He was entertaining. You know, not a great wrestler by any means, although he had some decent matches with Shawn Michaels and a few others. And his promos were live, pal. He was still entertaining. And another worst WCW, as far as worst WCW TV matches go, take your pick. There were so many bad ones that maybe involved Judy Bagwell. That New Blood Gauntlet might have been the worst WCW TV match of all time. There was one with David Flair on a Nitro. I think it's been shared on Twitter and X all the time. Like, awful stuff. David Flair had no business being in a wrestling ring at that point. Man, there were a lot. Thanks for the questions. Those were all great. Now, I got another one here from Ian. Ian says, I hope you're having a good week. What were your thoughts? We're going back a little bit. Ian's email was, what are your thoughts on Sergeant Slaughter's babyface run in 1984? He was combing through old content on the network and was shocked how over he was and how great his matches were in 84, specifically against the Iron Sheik in the boot camp match. It was a great run. It got cut a little bit short, though. He had some kind of a dispute with Vince McMahon, and Slaughter left when he was arguably at the peak of his popularity, and he went on to do G.I. Joe and had a good run outside of WWE, but who knows what he would have accomplished if he stuck around. He would have probably been in Hulk Hogan's shadow, been at best number 2, but I could have seen him having another good year or two with that character. I mean, he was huge in the 80s. G.I. Joe, the action figures, he was iconic. He was an iconic symbol of the 1980s. And yeah, it was a hell of a run. And he was quite the heel before that. So for him to flip the switch, and I mean, he did it again, went back to being a heel in 90 and 91, and then went back to being a face. He could do either role very well. He could be the hard-ass drill sergeant, be the Iraqi sympathizer, and then be the loved American hero. He did both roles very well, or all the roles. I mean, whatever role he did, he was very entertaining in it. And then with the commissioner, too. He'd be the babyface commissioner, then he'd be the heel commissioner, and be one of McMahon's stooges. You know, he did all this stuff very well. Great entertainer. Stomach Bug sent in a $2 super chat. Kind of a darker question, I guess. Says, what will happen to No DQ if and when you retire? Well, I'll probably die before that happens, and that'll be up to my wife if she wants to keep it going, or if somebody else wants to keep it going. I don't know, but I'd like to keep it going for as long as possible. As long as I can physically do it, I have no intentions on stopping. I love doing it. It pays the bills. So I'll keep doing it as long as I physically can. Shout out to Human Tornado, if that is in fact the real Human Tornado. Great indie wrestler. Loved him in PWG. Mr. Tito sent in a $5 super chat. Thank you for that, Mr. Tito. Says, how can Endeavor pressure Vince McMahon to resign, but not UFC's Dana White for smacking his own wife on video? That is a great question. I think that with Vince, there have been so many scandals with Vince that what happened in 2022 was really the final nail in the coffin for Vince. Vince has been a magnet for controversy for decades. Dana White, I don't know as much about the UFC and whatever scandals there are involving Dana White. I did see that video with his wife, and yeah, that was not good. But I mean, sexual assault allegations, I would say that's even worse. I mean, you've had plenty of domestic violence incidents over the years, Stone Cold and Deborah, and there's been many of them, and people end up letting it go, and wrestlers get therapy and all sorts of things. I just think with Vince, there were so many issues that it had to be addressed. Something had to give with Vince. He just had too many strikes against him. But thank you for that, Mr. Tito. Mr. Tito's definitely throwing some interesting questions out tonight. So thank you, Tito. I appreciate it. Mr. Anderson sent in a $5 super chat. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Says, could you see Jacob Fatu turning on Solo Sikoa and the rest of the Bloodline 2.0 at SummerSlam, and then Roman Reigns comes out and tells Fatu, good job, my new enforcer? That depends on what WWE has planned with the rest of the Bloodline. Jimmy and Jay, are they going to get back with Roman? Is Sami Zayn going to come back into the mix? I like the idea of the old Bloodline being back together versus the new Bloodline. But with Jacob Fatu, I initially thought he was going to be part of Roman's group. I thought he was going to be a babyface. So that is certainly a possibility. And are they going to bring even more people in? Umaga's son was somebody else who was rumored. Are they going to have additional names in the Bloodline? Jacob Fatu could definitely be a great babyface. You know, he's awesome. And I think we're going to see some big things out of him in WWE. But first things first, get Roman back. And I think the immediate course of action should be to get Roman back with the original Bloodline. At some point, maybe Jacob Fatu has enough of Solo's crap and leaves him. I don't know if it's going to happen as soon as SummerSlam, but maybe down the line, Jacob Fatu moves away from Roman Reigns or moves away from Solo Sikoa and joins up with Roman as part of the babyface version of the Bloodline. So thank you for that, Mr. Anderson. All right, we got one from TJS, and here we go with the political stuff. I advertised no politics for tonight, and look what we get. So TJS says, will Trump versus Biden be a squash if Joe can even compete? Name one thing others in wrestling, or name one thing others like in wrestling that you don't, and one thing you dislike that others do. Trump and Biden will not be a squash. It's going to be 46 versus 47%, whatever the number is. It's going to be very close. And even if Biden drops out, it's still going to be close, in my opinion. It's the country is more split than it's ever been. And that's all I'm going to say about politics. So one thing in wrestling that I like in wrestling that others don't. I mean, I feel like most of what I like, the majority likes. There's not too many things that I love that people just despise. I really have to think about that one. One thing I dislike that, or one thing I don't like or dislike that others do, that's a hard question to answer. Because again, I feel like I'm in sync with what most wrestling fans like. And, there's some things like contract signings I don't like, but some people like it. Some people like the contract signings. Some people don't mind the repetitiveness of WWE programming. Clearly, there are people that will watch literally whatever's thrown at them on TV. And, for me, I've seen it all, and I like to be surprised. I mean, if you're a younger fan, you haven't been watching as long, some of these things might not bother you as much. Like the contract signings, the one guy is out there, gets an interruption, another guy comes out. That stuff I don't really like too much, but there are definitely people that eat it up. I kind of got tired of the Tower of Doom spots all the time, and fans in the arenas always eat that stuff up. They love it. So yeah, there are some things that I don't particularly like that a good portion of wrestling fans will like, especially those in the arena. Maybe the fact that I'll tell you one thing I don't like some of the music, and some people like the music that's out there in AEW and WWE. I think maybe the worst thing about WWE and AEW right now is the music from both companies. But yeah, it's really hard for me to say like something that I really like that a lot of people hate. That's a tougher one for me to answer. I can't really think of anything off the top of my head. But good job, TJS. You did stump me a little bit on that one. Oh, geez. Mr. Tito, you're really going for it here. Mr. Tito says, which former female wrestler do you think paid $7.5 million during the mid-2000s? I have no idea. I'm not going to speculate on that one. I don't even know the full details of that. So I really have no clue, Mr. Tito. You've stumped me on one, and I don't really want to speculate on it either. But I appreciate the super chat. And if anybody in the chat room wants to give a prediction, by all means, go ahead. But I'm not going to speculate on that stuff. I don't know, and I'm not going to start opening the floodgates here, so to speak. But thank you, Mr. Tito. I appreciate it. Psycho Jet Black sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you for that, Psycho Jet Black. I appreciate it. Says, who is a great face / awful heel and vice versa? Great face, awful heel. Jim Duggan. I mean, I'm not sure if we're talking about currently or throughout wrestling history. But Jim Duggan was never a good heel. They tried that in WCW. Sting, even though I liked the Main Event Mafia, Sting as a heel just never worked for me. Ricky Steamboat, I'm not sure if they ever turned him heel in TNA at some point, but he was never a good heel. Rey Mysterio, I think Rey might have briefly been like a tweener in WCW. Rey Mysterio is a great face. And as far as heels go, I mean, The Miz has become a decent baby face, but he's more or less best as a heel. Some guys just know how to push the buttons. Some might argue MJF, although I was enjoying what MJF was doing towards the end of his run. Trying to think of heels. I mean, I think Brock Lesnar was much better as a heel. Not that he was an awful face, but I think Brock Lesnar being the mountain to climb was always the best way to present him. Having him be the baby face was a little awkward. Even though he was entertaining when he went up against Roman Reigns. That was a solid run. So yeah, I'm not really sure who I would say would be like a great heel, but a terrible baby face. Yeah, Mr. Tito, as far as your question goes, one of those 2004, 2005 Diva Search contestants, wouldn't shock me if it was one of them. There were some controversies. I think one of them left because of Randy Orton, allegedly, that he crapped in their bag. There were several women that were probably mistreated in WWE around that period. Those models that John Laurinaitis was hiring. Again, now I'm speculating on it, but wouldn't shock me if it was one of them from that 2005, 2006 period. Building Nexus sent in a $5 super chat. Thank you for that, Building Nexus. Building Nexus said, could you see The Rock revealing himself as the man behind Solo at Survivor Series? I don't know if it'll be Survivor Series. Here's what I'm thinking. Survivor Series, I'd like to see the War Games, Roman's Bloodline versus Solo's Bloodline, but I feel like that should have a feel-good moment. Roman Reigns and the old Bloodline pick up a big win. That would be a nice moment to have them triumphant at Survivor Series. But then after that, that's when The Rock's like, okay, time to show my face. I don't think The Rock's going to appear that soon. My feeling is it'll probably be January, WrestleMania season, when The Rock gets back into the mix. But again, what about Cody? I mentioned earlier. Maybe they're going to go with Cody Rhodes and John Cena and save The Rock versus Cody for down the line. But yeah, I think The Rock has to be involved, and it's just a matter of when. But I feel like Survivor Series might be too soon. I'd like to see the OG Bloodline get a big win and then have the turn or the revelation that The Rock was pulling the strings all along. Psycho Jet Black with a little comedy here for us tonight. Psycho Jet Black sent in $2. Says, Donald Duck versus Joey from Friends in a no DQ match. You always got some funny ones, Psycho Jet Black. I don't know what else to say to that one other than thank you for the super chat. Maybe somebody got a kick out of that one. Psycho Jet Black says, why was it Rikishi who ran over Steve Austin and not Triple H? I think the idea was to give Rikishi a push. That was a bad heel turn, though. Rikishi was a guy that did not need to turn. I don't know if they thought that out very well. Maybe they were thinking, okay, Triple H was too obvious. Triple H was the prime suspect in 1999 when the incident first happened, and then it got forgotten about until Austin returned. And maybe the idea was, okay, we need something unpredictable. Triple H is too obvious. They do Rikishi. It was a swerve because nobody expected something so ridiculous, considering how over Rikishi was. It was a bad idea. Rikishi turning heel. There's another example of a guy who was a terrible heel. Rikishi was a babyface character. Him going heel was a bad idea. And I think they realized it, and then they're like, okay, we got to go to plan B. Triple H was the one pulling the strings, which, yeah, even though Triple H was predictable, that's what it should have been. I think they wanted to try and swerve everybody, and it didn't work. So they ended up with Triple H in that role. And, yeah, the angle did not live up to the hype. I will say that. It's too bad. I don't think they thought it out very well. Rikishi almost felt like they drew a random name out of a hat. And they're like, we're just going to go with it for the shock value. And we'll try to explain it. He did it for the people. He did it for The Rock. Mr. Tito sent in a $5 super chat. Thank you for that, Tito. Mr. Tito says, should The Miz get a match and win against John Cena on his retirement tour? The guy put over Cena often. I don't really think John Cena should be losing too much. He's already put over several people. If he's doing like 30 matches in this last run, he needs to be winning most of them. And I'm already feeling like the loss to Solo did nothing for Solo's career. Same thing with Austin Theory, for that matter. Like, beating John Cena almost doesn't even mean anything. Cena needs a strong run. John Cena should be winning. He should be the John Cena of old. And maybe the final match before he goes, he puts over somebody clean, whether it's Cody Rhodes or Braun Breaker or Gunther. Put over one of the new guys. No, I don't think Miz should be beating John Cena by any means. There's my answer to that. Thank you, Mr. Tito. I appreciate the super chats tonight. Psycho Jet Black sent in $2. Thank you, Psycho Jet Black. Says, should Roman lose some matches before facing The Rock? I don't think so. Like I said, if anything, Roman should pick up a big victory at Survivor Series and keep him strong. There's really no need for Roman to be losing. He lost the title. He's Roman Reigns. He's coming back as a top babyface. I would keep him strong. And you can always do Roman Reigns versus Cody Rhodes in a rematch. You want to keep Roman as strong as possible. No need for him to be losing anytime soon. When there's an opportunity to elevate somebody, that's when you do it. But Roman Reigns, he's gonna be the man when he comes back, and I don't think he should be losing really at all. Mr. Anderson sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you for that, Mr. Anderson. Mr. Anderson says, was John Cena technically a heel when he was in Nexus? No, he was never a heel. He might have been a heel to a portion of the audience, but John Cena was always the righteous superhero. And some people were trying to make the argument he was holding people down, but John Cena was hustle, loyalty, and respect. That was him all the way through. And WWE never really wanted to test the waters and maybe tease the idea that John Cena was actually a manipulator. They never went that far with him. And they did tease a little bit of him going to the dark side with Kane, but that was about as far as they went with teasing a heel run. But yeah, I would say he was never a heel after 2003. TJS sent in a $10 super chat. Thank you for that, TJS. I appreciate it very much. So TJS lives in Arkansas. He did not go to Dynamite. He said, Tony Khan's strategy in giving away Will Ospreay versus MJF in front of 3,000 fans in Arkansas. AEW has to sell $50 pay-per-views, and their biggest match possible has been done now. It was 1 hour, so how could the rematch even top it? If anybody can top it, it would be those guys. I don't know if they're going to do a hardcore match or Falls Count Anywhere, cage match. But yeah, I feel like whatever rematch they do, it absolutely needs a stipulation. You cannot do a regular match for those guys. You really have to up the ante and make it a lights out match. Whatever gimmick you need, the rematch has to take it to the next level. After going 59 minutes, I think the next match has to be as wild of a stipulation as possible, where it's just pure carnage. We'll see what they come up with. Hopefully they can pull it off, but I think that those two guys are certainly capable of having an even better match than the one they had on Dynamite. Building Nexus sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you for that, Building Nexus. I appreciate it. The comment here, will the WWE TNA thing end with WWE raiding TNA? Well, that's what a lot of people fear, that this is all part of WWE trying to get more talent and basically, I don't even know what word to use for this, but just take as many people as they want for their brand. And they'll end up with Jordan Grace. They'll end up with Joe Hendry, say his name and he appears. I feel like that's the end goal for WWE. They kind of see TNA as like a developmental system in a way, where they can bring in guys that are getting good reactions, and TNA can test the waters with these people, and if they get hot, WWE can raid them, as you said. Raid is probably the best word. Just drain the well. Get all the talent you can and leave them with practically nothing. This relationship so far, I think, is benefiting WWE more than TNA, but people in TNA are being positive about it, and it is bringing some more eyeballs. But what's the long game here? Like, unless TNA can get some key WWE stars and maybe boost their attendance a little bit, I'm not sure how this really helps TNA long term. Mike Hunt sent in a $5 super chat, and this is the question of the year, maybe the question of the decade. Why is Jim Johnston not in the Hall of Fame? Created so many iconic themes. He 100% should be in, and the only reason I can think is he's not in good political standing with WWE, because there's no other good reason why he's not in that Hall of Fame. I know they focus on wrestlers, but they inducted Paul Heyman, and he was not a wrestler. Jim Johnston, I think, is as important as anybody else. And, going back to earlier, there was that question about, like, what do I like that other people might not like or care about? I think wrestling theme songs are really important. And I think that there are a good amount of people that disagree with me, that think, oh, yeah, who cares what music they have? But I think it's really important to the overall presentation of the wrestlers. So Jim Johnston should be in. Ken Shamrock should be in. Demolition, Cyndi Lauper. I put those people in ASAP. Michael sent in a $5 super chat. Thank you for that, Michael. I appreciate it. Michael says, do you think Tony Khan is getting too ambitious trying to run AT&T Stadium? Also, what do you think of a TNA World Champion Joe Hendry coming out at the Royal Rumble? Well, first of all, I don't think Tony Khan has confirmed that. If anything, he downplayed that rumor in a recent interview. I would think that is extremely ambitious. Now, I will say this. If AEW runs a stadium show in the United States, they'll draw a good-sized crowd. I don't think they're doing 80,000 or coming close to that, but the novelty of it being the first stadium show in the United States, they will get traveling fans. A lot of these pay-per-views only get the local crowds. Maybe they get some outsiders. The TV tapings certainly don't. It's just local crowds. But a stadium show, you will get people traveling for that. So they will do a better number than what they usually do. They might get 25,000, 30,000, 35, maybe 40,000 if they're lucky. It's ambitious for sure. They might be able to have a good size crowd to where it'll look acceptable on television. Joe Hendry coming out at the Royal Rumble, I could see that happening. He's got some time left on his contract, but if WWE scoops him up, he might not even be TNA World Champion. He might just be Joe Hendry making his WWE debut. Again, I think that all depends on his contract, but yeah, would not shock me if he's in the Royal Rumble. But then again, will he still be as hot as he is right now in 6 months? That remains to be seen. Psycho Jet Black sent in a $2 super chat. Worst faction, the Learning Tree or Retribution? Retribution is among the worst factions of all time. Learning Tree, is it even really a faction at this point? I guess it is. 3 people. It's not a great faction by any means, but I mean, I've already been more entertained by Chris Jericho going, "Hi, guys," than anything Retribution did. Anything. So take that for what you will. Easily, Retribution's the worst. I mean, they're up there with Aces and Eights as far as worst factions of all time. Mr. Tito sent in a $5 super chat. Thank you again, Tito. Much appreciated. Oh, God. Who did 1990s Aaron want to take more to Pound Town, Sonny or Sable? Probably Sable, but that's because Sable was showing off more than Sonny. And by the time Sonny really started getting popular, she self-destructed and ended up out of WWE. But Sable, you know, coming out in the Slammies with that outfit or lack thereof outfit, and then fully loaded, you know, all those things she was doing. How can you not go with Sable? If you're like a 15-year-old male, how can you not go with Sable when she's showing so little clothing? I hope that is the answer you were looking for, Mr. Tito. King Cray sent in a $2 super chat, says they should get a heel wise man like Umaga's manager. 100% agree. I know Armando Alejandra Estrada, and I cannot do the rolling R's to save my life. He should be the wise man. I think that's a fantastic idea, and I hope we see it sometime in the near future. I know he teased it, might not be anything to it, but I 100% am on board with that idea. So thank you for that super chat. Psycho Jet Black sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you. Says, best and worst movies with wrestlers as actors. Best one is They Live with Roddy Piper. John Carpenter, great director. I very much enjoyed that one. Worst movie might be anything with Hulk Hogan. Actually, the worst wrestling movie I've ever seen, The Wrong Side of Town. Batista, Rob Van Dam, love RVD, but man, that movie was awful. I think Ja Rule was in it, the rapper. Oh man, that movie was brutal, how bad that was. I mean, I think that was worse than any Hulk Hogan movie I've ever seen. And I've seen Suburban Commando and Santa with Muscles, although it's a tough call. But I would say Wrong Side of Town is the worst one I've ever seen that has wrestlers in it. Building Nexus sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you for that. Says, do you think Roman Reigns will ever be champion again? 100% yes. I definitely think he will be. It's just a matter of time. He'll have probably a couple more reigns. I don't think he's going to hold it for 4 years or 3.5 years, but he will be champion at some point in the future. I think he's got a good 5 or 6 years left in him as a top guy. And as this baby face coming back, I do think he'll be champion at least one more time with a solid run. Mr. Anderson sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Is Shinsuke Nakamura lost in the shuffle on SmackDown? Well, I actually think he's on Raw, but yes, he is lost in the shuffle. And it's a scenario where they don't have anything for him at the moment. He's doing house shows with Cody Rhodes. He's an avid surfer. He's enjoying his time. That's what he likes to do. He's making good money with WWE. He's had a solid run. I feel it's unfair when people say, oh, Nakamura's been wasted. It's been a terrible run. The dude's made bank. He's beaten John Cena. He won the Royal Rumble. He's been on TV more than he hasn't during his, 8 years now with WWE? I think he's had a great run for a guy that doesn't speak English very well. I think he's had a hell of a run in WWE, all things considered. And I know some people thought, well, New Japan Nakamura was a beast and he came into WWE kind of just coasting along. But you know what? Good for him. He put in the work in New Japan, got a great WWE deal, gets to surf during his free time, making money. He's living the life. I'm happy for the guy. And when there's a spot, they can put him in there. He can do whatever they need him to do. He can be a babyface. He can be a heel. He can work the upper card. He can work the opening match. Whatever they need, they got him. He's a good hand. Psycho Jet Black sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you for that. Says, thoughts on MVP's comments on Black Stars and Triple H. I'm not there, so I don't see what MVP sees, and he might be onto something. But I always felt like whether it's Vince McMahon or Triple H, I don't see them factoring race in. Like, it doesn't make any common sense from a business perspective. When you're running a business, the only color you see is green. You're looking for money, and if somebody's going to make money, you're going to push them. And they've pushed plenty of wrestlers of all sorts of races and religions and backgrounds. The Hurt Business should have been utilized better, though. I agree with that 100%. Like they got there. We were talking about underrated factions, and I mean, I think that they should have been booked even stronger than they were. Although some people would say they're not underrated because people loved the group for the most part, but they were definitely underutilized. I am on board with that thought process. They should have had a longer run, 100%. And thank you again, Mr. Tito. We sent in $2. Thanks for taking my money and questions. He says, good night. I got a couple more here before I wrap this up. Calvin Bowman had said, what is your favorite classic SummerSlam of all time and why? 1991 is my favorite SummerSlam growing up. I loved the Big Boss Man and Mountie jailhouse match, the match made in heaven, match made in hell, and of course, Bret Hart versus Mr. Perfect. LOD winning the tag team titles. Love that SummerSlam. And 92 as well. Wembley Stadium had some great moments. Mr. Anderson sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you for that. Says, has WWE underutilized Karrion Kross? Hard to say. Like, for whatever reason, Kross has not connected with his gimmicks in WWE. Maybe they didn't book him strong enough. Maybe the crowd just doesn't like Karrion Kross that much. I don't know. Whatever it is, it hasn't clicked. Maybe he needs a babyface turn, change in direction, the heel character. It feels too 80s. I will say that. Like, his gimmicks even from the beginning felt outdated. Felt like your stereotypical 80s heel. He had a badass entrance, but then the bell rang and just wasn't connecting. And to be fair, in his defense, having him come out with that mask was just a terrible idea. First impressions, it's hard to come back from that. And he was brought back, but yeah, he hasn't really connected with the audience in a way that I think we were all hoping for. This Guy Experience sent in a $2 super chat. I appreciate that. Thank you. Says, what is your favorite Shane McMahon high spot? Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure to have you on the live streams, This Guy. SummerSlam 2000 with Steve Blackman taking that bump. Huge fall from the top of that scaffold. And of course, the stuff, if you want to call them high spots, the King of the Ring match with Kurt Angle going through the glass. But yeah, I think of that fall he took at SummerSlam 2000 and the 2016 Hell in a Cell one. Michael Cole's like, for the love of mankind, which was really goofy. But yeah, I think the SummerSlam one is my all-time favorite. So thank you for that. And I got one more here, an email from Andrew Skinner. Do I think Braun Strowman will join the Wyatt Six at some point? No, I don't think so, because he's doing fine on his own. He doesn't need the Wyatt Six. Look at the guys in the group. Dexter Lumis was doing nothing. He needed a change. Nikki Cross was doing nothing. This is a big opportunity for Joe Gacy. These guys are going to be elevated with the Wyatt Six. Braun Strowman has the connection, of course, but he's having a solid run as his own entity. If anything, it's almost a step down for him to be part of a group at this point. So I totally understand him not being in the group. And I don't think he'll be part of it. If he was going to be part of it, they would have put him in already. Anyways, guys, I think I got one more here from Ian. So I will read it off very quickly. Ian says, why has WWE abandoned the babyface play-by-play and heel collar commentary team? NXT is the only one to have that dynamic. Pat is fun, but it's kind of repetitive when both commentators trash the heels and both cheer the faces. I agree with you, but at the same time, I'd rather have two guys that have good chemistry, and if they're both baby faces, then that's fine. And Corey Graves was doing the heel stuff for a while, but now he's the lead commentator. I hate when the lead commentator acts like a heel, and they were doing that with Michael Cole in 2010, 2011. Wasn't a fan of that. Pat McAfee, he's his own entity. And I love the combo of Michael Cole and Pat McAfee. It works for what it is. Wade Barrett, they could kind of make him a heel if they wanted to. I wouldn't mind that if they went more in that direction. But I think he's been solid on SmackDown. It doesn't bother me that much. I do miss it, but don't do it unless the circumstances are right and you have the right person for the role. And I think Wade Barrett's doing fine as he is. Pat's doing fine as he is. So leave it at that. For the first time in a long time, I don't have any problems with the Raw and SmackDown teams. I think they're great just as they are. Two-person teams. They're going to bring in this guy from ESPN. I kind of have mixed feelings about that. I don't think we need a three-person team. But what they're doing right now, I think is good. If there's an opportunity to bring in a heel commentator down the line, by all means, do it if the guy fits in and the chemistry's there. Anyways, guys, I'm going to wrap this one up. Went well over an hour on this one. Thank you all so much for your super chats. Very much appreciated. Like I said recently, I'm going to try to make this a monthly thing. I did one, I think, exactly a month ago. We'll definitely plan on one in August. Have no DQ&A video continue every single month. So stay tuned for that. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up and tell a friend. Spread the word about nodq.com. Buy a shirt to support the site. Go to nodq.com/merch. I guess I got to go check out what Donald Trump is up to and see what kind of shenanigans we're going to see in that. But anyways, guys, have a great night. Say yes to nodq.com, and I will see you all next time.